Well, good morning, everybody. Happy New Year. Welcome to the first PEPH webinar of 2024 entitled Meet the Editors. My name is Liam O'Fallon, and I am a health specialist in the Population Health Branch here at the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. And I also coordinate the Partnerships for Environmental Public Health, or PEPH program here at NIEHS. I will be your moderator for today's webinar. But before we get started, I want to address some quick housekeeping items and set the stage for our presentation. As you've noted, we've muted all participants to ensure the best Zoom experience for everyone. Questions will be held until after the last presenter today. And if you have questions, we invite you to please submit them via the Zoom Q&A feature that you should find at the bottom of your screen. If you have questions, to access that Q&A area, just hover over the mouse along the bottom of your screen to see the toolbar. It'll pop up, and from there, select Q&A, and you are welcome to submit those questions at any time, but we are going to hold them until after the last presentation. Submit all content-related questions to me, Liam, and any technical issue questions, if you are having any problems with Zoom, to Justin Crane-Tech Help. Please let me know which presenter the question is for so we know who to direct it to. All right, so let's begin. Often within the Partnerships for Environmental Public Health Network, there are questions about different journals that are appropriate for environmental public health publications. Therefore, from time to time, we convene a webinar or two to hear from the editors of different journals. It is an opportunity for them to share a little bit about their journals, new visions, directions, and opportunities. It's also a great time for you to ask them questions that you might have about their journals. So we are pleased to have the following three speakers join us today. Joel Kaufman, Editor-in-Chief of Environmental Health Perspectives. Kalpana Balakrishnan, the inaugural Editor-in-Chief of the relaunch for the Journal of Health and Pollution. And Elaine Cohen Hubble, Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Exposure Science and Environmental Epidemiology, otherwise known as JESEE. For the sake of time, I invite you to check out the full speaker bios online. We'll drop that link in the chat box. The first presentation will be given by Joel Kaufman. Joel, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Liam. I'm assuming you can hear me. I just have a few slides to show here, and I'm really hoping that we have the opportunity for a fair amount of back and forth during the Q&A session today. Just want to talk a little bit about environmental health perspectives, which I'm going to guess is relatively well known to most of the audience. I see there's quite a few of my colleagues and friends among the attendees, and the PEPH network, of course, is well known to EHP in our editorial team. We are a journal which is published with the support of NIEHS and has NIEHS staff and contractors and who do the core work of publishing the journal and leading the editorial team. The editorial editorial boards include primarily individuals at institutions outside of NIEHS per se, but we have a long-standing history, actually, at our 50-year anniversary, and we have a vision that was last year, aspire to be the recognized leader at the intersection of advances in environmental health sciences and scholarly publishing. And as folks know, among journals that publish in the field of environmental health and take original articles in this space across all the disciplines of environmental health sciences, we are considered a top tier journal, and we are always interested in hearing how to do what we do better. Our mission is really to advance knowledge, contribute to public health, timely publication, and effective dissemination of high impact scientific content in the environmental health sciences. We are a fully open access journal, and that means we call it diamond open access, and that means that we operate with fully open to with free access to all content, as well as having no author publishing charges, so it doesn't cost anything to submit in the journal. We operate under a model called continuous publication, which is that even though when you see issues on the web page and you get a table of contents, if you subscribe to that, and I would encourage folks to subscribe to our table of contents, we publish continuously, and that means that as soon as a paper is accepted and then ready, completes its final copy editing and typesetting and so forth, it appears online without regard to sort of trying to fill out a particular issue or waiting to be populated in an issue. So there's no time lag in that regard. And our most recent impact factor released last year was just a little over 10, which again puts us among the sort of top tier of public health, environmental health, toxicology, environmental sciences journals in all categories, particularly among those that aren't just publishing reviews, which are a different category. So we have lots of things always going on at EHP, and in keeping with our desire to keep up to date, we actually just launched an updated web page in the last month, and hopefully keep that looking fresh and responsive to people's expectations for online publishing. I've been now the editor-in-chief for just about 4 years, and during that time, the journal has undergone quite a few changes. We've really revamped our editorial review processes, have changed several of the things that we do in terms of how we consider papers, how we think about what we're interested in doing, how we recruit papers, our communication strategies with our audience. And we've included a few new types of articles, one being invited perspectives, which are sort of editorial content by experts in the field about a paper that are published along with a paper to provide sort of some context and additional insights into what the paper is adding to the field. And we do that on about a third of the papers that we publish will have an invited perspective. And a new article type, which just had its first couple published in the last few months, which we call seminars, which I can talk more about if you're interested. And that the idea is to have primers. So in addition to original research and reviews, these are kind of primers on important topics, whether they're new developments in environmental health sciences or sort of a primer on a fundamental science issue or methodological issue that underlies environmental health research, or just a review of the right way to do certain kinds of research. We're soliciting those, have a proposal process on the webpage, so anybody can propose one, and we'll have a conversation with you before you actually have to write the thing about what it is and what we're interested in seeing. So a big part of what we've also undertaken in the last few years is rethinking our international activities at the journal, migrating from what we used to call an international edition of the journal and translations of the journal to trying to think more about how we support high quality scholarship in the global South, in low and middle income countries and in indigenous communities. And that has meant, and you'll hear more about it, in particular, the launch of, under our EHP publishing umbrella, the Journal of Health and Pollution, sort of relaunching a journal which already existed, which followed the same practices of being open access and free to publish in, but now part of the EHP publishing family, and Kalpana will be telling you about that, but this has been a big undertaking that we have, and part of our overall mission at EHP Publishing to strengthen capacity in low and middle income countries to be leading in environmental health research that's relevant to those communities. Another thing that we've launched in the last few years has been an early career researcher initiative, which has a variety of activities that are ongoing, an advisory panel that we convene regularly of early career investigators, mentored writing opportunities, a new reviewer pool of early career researchers, a mentored review program, and trying to give people an experience of seeing what it's like at a journal and how editorial decisions are made for early career researchers to get them engaged in the process. Lots of stuff is on our webpage, so I don't feel like I need to repeat it here. And this wasn't intended to be sort of a primer on how to write a manuscript, how to review a manuscript, how to submit a manuscript. I'm happy to answer questions about any of those things. A lot of it is on our webpage. We have a lot of materials there, but I would invite people to look there, including a resource center on how to write a good review. With regard and information here on how to connect with the Early Career Researcher Initiative. And we do have, of course, have a social media presence. It looks like that's the last of my slides. I just wanted to add one more thing, which is with regard to some PEPH members approached me shortly after I joined the journal a few years ago now, and wanted to know about how we at EHP could be more responsive. We had a dialogue, how could we be more responsive around issues of community-oriented research, kind of the social science research that has an environmental health angle. And we've taken this seriously and have incorporated kind of a community engaged environmental health research as a core part of what we're interested in publishing. We've published quite a lot now in this field, including both adding new associate editors with particular expertise in these topics who can handle these papers, and a focus on both on the one hand community engagement in research, and on the other hand scientific work that advances environmental justice goals. And those have become pretty clear foci in the journal that I'd be happy to talk about more as well. So I'll turn it over now back to Liam, I guess, for the next introduction.
Thank you very much, Joel. That was great, and you took away kind of my prompts for questioning too. So I hope that folks will drop in questions as it relates to community engaged research approaches and getting those kinds of social science, et cetera, publications put in. So please, folks, as you have questions, drop those into the Q&A box. So for that active discussion at the end. Our next presentation, it will be given by Kalpana Balakrishnan. And so Kalpana, the floor is yours. Thanks for being with us this evening.
Yeah, well, thank you, Liam. Good evening, everyone. I do have a little bit of respiratory infection going, so I hope my voice is audible enough. Please do not hesitate to interrupt me if I don't come out loud and clear. So first of all, it's such a pleasure and privilege to be a part of this seminar. I've been a follower of PEPH webinars in the past, and I've been a long-term author and reviewer and associate editor for EHP. But as Joel mentioned, Joel's been the editor-in-chief for 4 years, and I've just been editor-in-chief for maybe just over 4 months. So many things that we wish to see the journal to evolve into are yet to come, and but we have a great role model in being a sister journal of EHP, and therefore the newly launched Journal of Health and Pollution, which is right now in its second avatar. It was previously published under a different publishing house, and what the Journal of Health and Pollution has become as a member of the EHP publishing house is a very important one. If I can have the next slide. And I say this because I seem to hear somebody speaking on the background. I don't know, Liam, do you hear it?
I do hear that. So if
somebody has to be muted.
Thank you.
All right. All right, great. So I was just going to say that what is different about the Journal of Health and Pollution, both in terms of its aims and also as a member of the EHP family. The first is that being a member of the EHP family already gives the journal a phenomenal amount of branding. And as an LMIC-based researcher in environmental health for more than 3 decades now, I can say with confidence that the EHP brand means the single biggest aspirational goal for most environmental health researchers, and clearly the impact factor now justifies that. But more importantly, I think we have to recognize that there is an evidence gap in many parts of the world. And while most of them are in low and middle income countries, the World Bank classified low and middle income countries, sometimes, the GDP of a country is not synonymous with research infrastructure. And those regions also tend to be evidence scarce. And therefore, the primary aim of the journal is, being a sister journal of EHP, publish high quality research, reviews and commentaries, and a whole other set of categories of publications that primarily address environmental health in regions and communities with less developed research infrastructures, so that we actually end up filling the evidence gap globally. But we also insist that this should be work led by researchers and practitioners from lower resource areas, and they're working on issues, even if not entirely novel, but they close a very important gap for the region. And these may be issues that are very, very important locally for these communities. And what better way than to have a local researcher be the voice of this new evidence from these communities wherever and whenever they become available. So in terms of the aims of the journal, we do want to mirror the EHP aims of high quality science being communicated in timely ways and in the most wide reaching ways. But really the focus is on the geography as well as the human resources in a particular geography, from the resource impoverished or the resource scarce regions anywhere in the world for environmental health. And one of the things that often comes up for clarification or in our discussions and editors is, how do we sort of really define the balance between what is the health focus of a particular article and what is the pollution focus of the article. In the past, in its earlier avatar, the Journal of Health and Pollution was much more open to things that were heavily pollution focused, with a fair amount, fairly little emphasis on health. We in the journal really want to sort of have that linkage be a lot more explicit, even if they are only modeled, and it doesn't have to be primary data on health and pollution, but nevertheless, those linkages, those implications for health from pollution defined very, very broadly. Any environmental agent that is suspected or known to adversely affect human health is included. And therefore, we define risks, environmental risks very, very broadly, but the linkage to health has to be quite explicit. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. So we've been launched just about 4 or 5 months ago, and one of the biggest benefits that researchers in low and middle income countries look for is not only a journal that will house their paper as the voice of evidence from that region, but not be financially handicapped with article processing fees. So being a member of the EHP family, no subscriptions, no paywalls, and no author fees, no hidden costs whatsoever for the authors. And the fact that it would be a continuous publication really relieves the burden of having to wait for the article to appear cited. And we do want to be very mindful of the range of environmental health topics, and sometimes the linkages to health for climate change or biodiversity loss or ecosystem degradation may not be so apparent, but we really want to encourage approaches or frameworks that would sort of make these connections and invite papers on these themes as well. Those are not classical environmental risk factors, because climate change has become one. Environmental health risk factors that we want to sort of focus on, but we want to be as broad and as possible in our definition of environmental risks. Can I have the next slide? Yeah, so perhaps this is the last but one slide, but I want to sort of just spend a minute on author eligibility and what we define to be an equitable research partnership. The author eligibility is very unique. I don't think there is any other journal of this kind in environmental health, where we insist that both the primary and the corresponding authors of a manuscript must reside or be affiliated to a lower resource region. Low and middle income country defined by the World Bank would definitely qualify, but other evidence scarce regions are also considered through our triaging process at the weekly editorial meetings. But what is the reason why we insist on both the primary and the corresponding authors of a manuscript is that we want to make sure that the capacities are built for researchers in this region, both to serve as primary authors, which is increasingly getting more and more feasible, but to be a corresponding author also would be an important metal that these LMIC researchers must sort of acquire. So we don't want to sort of, just be satisfied with the primary author being an LMIC author. We do want to encourage that we identify a corresponding author from amongst the team of authors, and often in multi-country studies, we do have pairs, a senior author who's capable of being the corresponding author. But of course, sometimes a high-income country member of the team may be much more experienced being a corresponding author, but we want that capacities to be built for the low and middle income country author, not just to be primary authors, but also corresponding authors. But this is the early stages of the journal. We might revisit this based on how the authorship is panning out. But the underlying point for primary, corresponding, any co-authorship or any publication is to promote equitable research partnerships, which means that investigators from local communities are, the primary executors about conducting the science. The collaborations are, of course, very much the need, without which these capacities cannot be built in the low and middle income countries. But we want to very strongly watch out for helicopter research. We do not want to have any semblance of inequitable partnerships in which the formulation of the research question, the execution of the study, the analysis, and the communication about what the analysis has shown is actually lopsided in a way that the person who executed has no role in actually analyzing or any other kinds of imbalances, as you can think. Truly equitable research partnerships are going to be actively encouraged, and therefore they would be the defining criteria for accepting the publication. And we might have to revisit the primary and corresponding author, definitely not the primary author, but perhaps the corresponding author of a manuscript if the situation requires. The last slide, please. Yeah, so the notable updates, I think Joel covered most of them. They are common to both EHP and JHP. I think many of the people who have logged in, if they are from an LMIC region, we know the value of developmental editing. we know the value of journal offered editing services, and often we are not able to afford them. So one of the important notable update is, in addition to all the website that is totally managed by the EHP publishing team, the editorial manager that many of you must have used EHP must be familiar with it. It is the same for JHP, is the fact that all the authors who pass muster for consideration for developmental editing will be offered developmental editing services at highly subsidized or at no cost, which I think is a major step in terms of providing resources for publications which are right at the cusp of high quality, but not really cutting the bar for actual publication in JHP. So thank you again, and I will be happy to answer any questions. It is a really exciting launch. We're very grateful for EHP for having taken this event. Just one last word about the deputy editor team is the fact that we now have deputy editors all from the regions that the journal wants to represent. So we have 8 deputy editors drawn from all LMIC or indigenous community regions, with a few associate editors and a few deputy editors, being from high income countries, but with extensive experience in low resource settings. And therefore, we are looking forward to an exciting journey in the years to come. Thank you.
Kalpana, thank you very much for that excellent presentation and overview of JHP. We are getting some nice questions coming in for our presenters. I'd please ask that folks just use the Q&A feature that you should see pop up at the bottom of your screen for submitting your questions. That will help us all out. Now, at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Elaine Cohen Hubble from the Journal of Exposure Science and Environmental Epidemiology. Elaine, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. And I am just so pleased to have this opportunity. JESEE is a very different, published under a very different model than the EHP journals. And that's has some challenges that come with it, but also some really nice opportunities. So I'm just gonna start by very quickly saying who I am not representing, because my day job is with the US EPA, and I just want to be very clear that I serve in the role of editor-in-chief for JESEE off duty on my own time. JESEE is a society journal. It's the journal of the International Society of Exposure Science, but my contract's actually with Springer Nature. However, I also do not represent Springer Nature. So let's just jump right in, and let me tell you a little bit about our journal. I have, let's see, how do I do this? I'm not, there we go. I have been serving as editor-in-chief. I'm just starting my 8th year. And the goal for me has been to use JESEE as really a way for the exposure science community, the environmental health scientists with an interest in exposure, to really have a place to build sort of a community of science, to both publish content, advance the field, and actually build our capacity in terms of developing scientists and developing the scientific community in this area. And so this is why my first slide is actually to give a shout out and really call out that we have a group of executive editors, associate editors, and a social media editor. And in addition to a large editorial review board and a group of volunteer reviewers. And these people all volunteer, serve, provide incredible contributions. All of our scientific content is shepherded by this group. We don't have a scientific staff. The publisher provides does publishing, does production, but all the content is the responsibility of the editorial board. And so the other thing that I want to sort of point out is that many of the associate editors have been people who, for some amount of time, have served as editorial review board members, and I have been advancing volunteer reviewers when I see that they've got experience and have been really committed to the journal to roles as editorial review board members. So we've sort of developed a pipeline. We encourage people who are interested to volunteer as reviewers and then move into these other roles with the journal. And then the exciting thing for, I think what we have over the last number of years is really built a very committed and energetic editorial review board and group of associate editors who themselves are both scoping what are the areas of importance that we're interested in the journal, but also really pushing the envelope and advancing the field more broadly. So let's see, worked last time. Okay, so aims and scope, I have kind of a lot more text than the previous presentations, but I have some links and I encourage you to just go ahead and look at the website. It's kind of wander around and find some of these things, but we do have an aim to be the premier and authoritative source of information on advances in exposure science. We are particularly interested in research that integrates exposure information with knowledge coming from other scientific disciplines. So we're really looking for contributing towards solutions for pressing environmental and public health concerns. So I've been over the years positioning this journal sort of at the interface of science and decisions. We're trying to make sure that scientists understand how to design, conduct, report science that decision makers can actually use to advance environmental and public health and be health promoting and health protecting. And then we're focused very much on novel advances in exposure science, exposure analysis, and environmental epidemiology to understand health for the full range of environmental stressors. So when people are looking at whether their epidemiology study is going to be a good fit for JESEE, we're always looking to see how did you do the exposure in the study. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about topics. And again, this has been these topics, which is something that we're constantly updating. This was updated maybe a year or year and a half ago. But these are the things where our community of researchers and scientists and decision makers are most interested and wanting to see high quality science conducted and reported. So research that's focused on critical environmental health challenges, and I think these are all things that most of you are interested in and or working on. And then critically, the tools for conducting and doing this kind of science and making these kinds of decisions. So advances in the different kinds of biomonitoring, exposomics, sensors, modeling, geospatial kinds of data, and data science that are being used. And then because we're really focused on this interface between science, we're interested in approaches for integrating that information from the different disciplines and enabling decisions. And those kinds of analyses and to JESEE and to our community of researchers and readers. So please check those out and look at those in more detail. The other thing I want to sort of point out is
Hey, Elaine.
we specifically ask our reviewers. So what we ask our reviewers is what we need from our authors. And we're specifically asking our reviewers, they actually get these questions and they respond with high, medium, low, yes, no, and then more detail. But we ask them to comment on the originality of the paper. So JESEE is, we know there's many opportunities these days in scientific publishing to, get out papers and things at different levels of, sort of content. We all have different kinds of work that we do, some of it, in different levels of trainees working with us and ability to get new data and information. But we ask our reviewers to comment on the originality and novelty of the paper. Is it high? Is it medium? Is it low? And then we ask them to comment on the overall scientific quality of the paper, including the methodology. And that really is a stop go for us. We do expect high quality science. The impact of the paper in the field of exposure science or in enabling decisions and actions. And so that is also pretty critical. That is critical for us. And then things about whether the impact would increase if the paper was revised to address some of the key points that reviewers identify. And importantly, what is significant about this paper in terms of advancement of the field of exposure science and public health? And this is really the so what. We really are working with authors at all stages of their career to do a really good job at communicating the science that they're generating and knowing why they're doing studies, reporting out why they were doing the studies and what the really take-home message is for that study. And this is a work in progress for all of us, but I know that over the course of these last number of years, we've all seen how important it is to be able as scientists to communicate the importance of what we're doing. We're not just doing it because we're interested, we're doing it. This is applied science, exposure science is a field, environmental health is a field. It's very much about applying science, right? And this journal is something where we're really passionate about helping connect science, in a way that people can use it. So these things are all things that we ask our reviewers to comment on, and we expect our authors to consider. So let's see what else I have. Okay, so I am going to just go ahead and flat out address the elephant in the room, which is how different the publication model is. This Springer Nature is a for-profit publisher, and for a variety of reasons, the International Society of Exposure Science has the journal with this publisher and has negotiated the agreement that it currently is in place. So there are page charges. If you are a member of the International Society of Exposure Science, you do get a discount on page charges, and that's worth looking into. And if we invite content, we are able to waive page charges. So, and we're always interested in hearing ideas or hearing about really important content, papers that you feel we should consider. I am able to invite things and waive charges. There are a set of agreements that the publisher has been putting in place and others that they are working on, and these are called transformative agreements. And again, I'm not representing the publisher, so I'm not the best one to explain this. But what I would say is depending on the country that you live in or the organization that you work for, there may be an agreement in place that would not only cover your page charges, but would actually more importantly cover the open access fees, which currently are extreme. So please look into that. And then the other thing I will say on let's see, page, so there are, yeah, so this is a little bit of a barrier, but I think that there are ways that people can, sort of look at these and address these. So I think, let me see, I wanted to say, okay, so another thing I wanted to say about if you're publishing in JESEE and you're not able to pay the open access fee and you don't have one of these, you're not from an organization or a country that has an agreement where the open access is covered, then understand that when you publish, you have a link, a shared link that goes with your paper, and you as an author have the ability to take your paper, post it anywhere you want on your website, I think on your LinkedIn, whatever, and that becomes accessible. So, and then the final thing that I would say is, which I just lost my train of thought. So that you have the ability to share your paper broadly, and I guess the final thing, just kind of wrapping up, that I'll say is that I also, when the other thing that's a little bit unique about JESEE in this day and age is that when people publish, when you submit your paper, it goes through review, it's accepted, it goes through production, it immediately goes online. So it all goes online, just like any of the open journals. But then we are still putting out issues. So there are 6 issues a year, and those issues I put together. And so there's sort of an opportunity for a second view or a second push forward of your article and promotion of your article. And those I tend to group topically, just to give added sort of impact for authors and for readers. We also do special topics where researchers in the field guest edit, they guest edit particular topics. Recent ones that have been really strong include one on health equity. We have one coming out in our next issue that will be focused on contaminants in drinking water. There have been other ones focused on built environment, and there's just a range of things, but we do that too. And so when I put out each issue, I also select several articles for free access for the duration of the issue. And I do always make sure that the ones I select are ones that are not already open access. So there are ways that we're making things as accessible as we can. And there are ways that authors, can take ownership and promote their papers and make those papers accessible. So I think that the last thing I will do is throw up some additional resources that when you look at the slides, you'll be able to see. And one and then finally, just say thank you and encourage you all. I realize I did not put the link here, but to sign up for the alerts when each of those issues, 6 issues a year, is published. And that's an alert that you would need to sign up for. And I think at this point, I can just take questions with the other editors. And thank you so much for having me.
And thank you very much, Elaine, for that excellent presentation. And we have about 15 minutes for a quick conversation. We've got some nice questions in the Q&A box. And so I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one that we have for Dr. Kaufman. So community engaged approaches often use exploratory qualitative methods. To what extent do you publish qualitative research in EHP?
I would say that we do publish some qualitative research from EHP and are willing to, if qualitative research is well conducted, we are happy to fully consider it. And we have, as I suggested, we've got a couple of associate editors now that we've recruited who specifically feel comfortable reviewing qualitative research. And to be frank, we don't get a lot of submissions. I think people are a little afraid to submit their work, but I think if it's making them, if it's novel and making a big impact and is in an area in which the editorial team believes qualitative research is going to really help us understand either behavior, attitudes, knowledge, or the impacts of health on a community, of environmental agents on a community, we're interested. And I would say that overall, of course, the issue is that our overall acceptance rate, we get a lot of submissions. We're highly selective. We're accepting about between 5 and 10% of submissions on a typical year. And we are and I would say qualitative research, a well described qualitative research effort, is just as likely to be accepted as any other kind of research that we get.
All right. Thank you for that, Joel. For Kalpana, so would a well-resourced community-based study conducted in the US, but in an understudied community, be appropriate for JHP?
The first answer would be no, because this is, yes, the community setting may not have been, studied much, and that particular issue might require much more attention than it has gotten. But JHP, really is targeted at increasing the voice in which the overall evidence on environmental health is really scarce. And therefore, indigenous communities may be an exception, but, this is not primarily directed at high income country settings in which particular communities have been facing some disadvantageous, burdens of environmental health risks.
Okay, so that there was a follow-up question from another participant asking about pollution and indigenous communities here in the US. So it sounds like that might be.
Yeah, we do make a distinction there.
All right, thank you, Kalpana. All right, so, and here's one I think that actually goes nicely for all three of you. Can you all provide any general tips for first-time authorship to your journal? So, we get a lot of, new investigators, young investigators, early stage investigators. What would be a key tip that you would say to point them in the right direction to be successful for your journal?
I'd be happy to comment.
What?
Yeah, so with my trainees, when they're first working to report out their research, I suggest that they go, I give them a couple journals to look at. So you could look at the couple that are here and a couple of our competitors, and find studies that are similar to yours, right? And look at papers and see how they're structured, see what kinds of details are reported in methods, what kinds of synthesis of the information the different studies and different authors have done. So I think it's incredibly helpful as a first-time author to find, a set of articles that you see as good models structurally in terms of, I'm not talking about copying articles. I'm talking about looking and learning from how the articles are structured and the level of detail and what's in the main text versus in supplemental information. So I think that's a really, really good way to get started.
Thanks, Elaine.
I would just add a couple things. One is to take advantage of mentors who can help you get a paper ready for publication. And there are some resources available to help people, sort of edit papers, such as International Society for Environmental Epidemiology has a peer editor program, which will help people, get papers, particularly if you're from a group that's historically underrepresented in research, help you get your paper up to speed. And there are, but mostly I would say colleagues, mentors helping you along the way. And then as Dr. Hubble indicated, really looking to see what papers look like in the journals that you want to publish in and trying to have your paper match that look. That's part of becoming a successful author. So.
Thanks, Joel.
Just a quick add-on. I think both Dr. Hubble and Dr. Kaufman covered this. The journals these days are providing a lot of information on their home pages and are linked to a lot of resources. And Dr. Hubble even showed some of such resources on, JESEE's website. And a lot of times the authors don't take enough time to read through all the information that the journal's homepage provides. And a lot of times, authors end up, publishing things that are totally out of scope. First authors, most of the time, make that mistake to submit to a journal that does not fit with the scope of their own work. And, taking the time and really looking at, I think I will fit. And then the next step of sort of really looking up a few articles in the same journal that you want to publish in that mirror your own area of work certainly would be a great way. But also one last thing I wanted to add is first authors must, identify some specific targeted capacity building, avenues as I would say, especially for the low and middle income country researchers, because these capacities are not automatically part of the curriculum. And this is not expected out of many of the educational programs, even at the graduate level. And therefore, first authors from LMICs must search for where such opportunities, how to, attend a manuscript writing workshop, attend a manuscript editing workshop, attend a language editing workshop, take some help, because without those capacities, expecting that, you have finished your graduate degree and therefore you will actually be able to publish often ends up disadvantaging them. And it's a long haul for them to get it published.
Excellent. Thank you. So sort of building on this notion of managing expectations and communicating with folks who are interested in submitting to your journals, what is the typical turnaround time for authors to receive reviewer comments and editors to make a decision? We talking, you submit it on a Friday and by the following Friday, you've got a response? Are we talking, next month? 6 months.
So I can't speak for all journals, but I think where EHP are, unless there's a particular issue like they submit it, the night before Christmas or something like that. But generally, we have a first triage look at all the papers that come in and hope to have a make a decision about whether or not a paper is going to go out for full peer review within about a week of a submission. And so we expect that most people, if their paper isn't going to be sent on, are going to, hear within, 7 to 10 days of their submission. That's our goal. And that's, I think, fairly standard at most journals to aim to do something like that. Some are a little faster, some are a little slower, but that's kind of the range. If a paper goes out for peer review, then we enter into a challenging time because getting peer reviewers can be challenging, and wrangling those reviewers to return their reviews can be challenging. So it's a little bit out of our hands as editors, but while we aim to get decisions back to people within sort of 6 to 8 weeks, often it stretches into the 3-4 month if a paper is chosen for peer review. The good news is that, of papers, at most journals of papers that get sent for peer review, a substantial number will end up with a revised decision and not a reject decision, so that in either case, the likelihood is that people will know soon enough whether this is going to work for them or they need to go to another journal. And that's the way we do it. Dr. Hubble, I see your
Yeah,
finger
no,
up.
you made a couple points that I want to follow up on. And one is this time of year, timing. Please know that when you submit a paper, for instance, just before Christmas, or the other really bad time to submit a paper, that everybody does this. Everybody submits, goes on summer holiday or vacation, and so do all the reviewers. So there are times of the year when please feel free to do that, but just know that just like you got your work in and wanted to go on leave, so did everybody else. And it takes much longer to get reviews over the summer. It takes longer, over Christmas, it's more like a month kind of thing. But over the summer, there's a couple months where there's some good dead time. So that's one point on timing. The other thing I wanted to just follow up on is the issue of getting reviewers, which again, we are in an environment of such a massive amount of scientific publishing. And I know that all of you, just as we are getting endless in our inboxes requests for reviews, to do peer reviews, you are too, and it becomes, it's all, sometimes these automated messages, you just ignore them. Please consider that as a community, we do need to take some responsibility. And when we publish, we also need to do peer review. And consider too that, where you're wanting to publish is also a really appropriate place for responding and accepting some peer reviews. So, just kind of a rule of thumb, when you consider your paper needs at least 2 peer reviews to be published, 2 quality peer reviews to be published, that then, as a lead author or whatever, you should be doing 2 reviews to help help this like sort of ecosystem of scientific publishing in the space, in the communities, in the journals, where we want to have that capacity and where we want to enable and sort of move this process along.
Excellent. So we are running out of time here, and there's one final question. It's a clarifying question for Joel and Kalpana that we received. So one of the participants was asking, do you publish articles on environmental issues researched by your organization on behalf of disadvantaged fence line communities, or is it research that has been done in partnership or about? But can you please just kind of clarify?
So I guess that's a an important point to make about, I think, all the journals represented here, is that we are primarily reviewing and publishing contributions submitted by outside investigators to the journals for publication, rather than creating the science ourselves. Now, each of us represented here are publishing papers ourselves, but our work with the journal is to look at what gets submitted to the journal. So we're happy to publish papers on those topics, but we generally aren't generating news findings ourselves from the editorial side. We are dependent on getting those submissions and reviewing those submissions, and are excited to publish them.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. Well, we are running out of time here. I want to thank all three of you for your excellent presentations. We've been getting questions about whether or not these slides will be available afterwards. We have recorded today's session. The slides will be posted. The recording, I believe, will get posted about 10 days after the event. So if you enjoyed today's webinar, please stay in contact with us. We've got a PEPH listserv. We will drop that link into the chat box. We have podcasts. In addition, if you like today's topic and would like to suggest other topics, you can drop suggested topics for future PEPH webinars in the chat box, or follow up with us at PEPH@niehs.nih.gov. So I want to thank our three speakers today, Joel Kaufman, Kalpana Balakrishnan, and Elaine Cohen Hubble, for their time and their insights. And I wish everybody a happy and a healthy 2024. I hope you found today's webinar as informative as I have.